weight, maintain it with little to no effort, and never diet again? If you just answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to The Perfect Gauge. I'm your host, Caroline Trickey, dietitian and eating psychology coach, and I'm so glad you're here. A few weeks ago, one of my gorgeous clients, let's call her Amy, turned up for her appointment with a beaming smile across her face, and I could tell she was bursting to tell me something. As soon as she sat down, she blurted out what it was. Work had been really stressful recently, which she was actually handling quite well, until one day something happened. Something happened that she was really frustrated about, and she found herself in the kitchen eating a cookie. So here she was in the kitchen, and she'd eaten half the cookie before she realized what she was doing. But as soon as she noticed, she also became aware that it was really sweet, possibly a little stale, and she really wasn't enjoying it. So she threw the rest away in the bin, then stood there in amazement at what she'd just done. Amy had surprised herself by how easy it was for her to do that. As she said, the old Amy would have eaten 6 cookies, which was how many were left in the packet, and still wanted more. She was thrilled with her progress, as she never thought she could be one of those people. Those people who can stop. But in the moment, she realized she was. Have you ever had the experience where you felt out of control around certain food? Do you ever get urges where you feel compelled to eat? And it doesn't matter what you do, the urges won't go away. And so you eat, but then feel like you can't stop. If you've ever experienced this, know you're not alone. I have so many clients come to me saying, I'm doing really well, but then it's like something comes over me and I have to eat. Or I'm not that hungry, but when I start eating, I just can't stop. And I get it. I was there too once. I couldn't even open a packet of Apricot Delight, which for those of you who don't know what they are, they're little squares of like a whole lot of sugar and a very small amount of dried apricots. But they happen to also be very delicious. Anyway, they used to be my kryptonite, as I used to feel helpless and out of control around them. Once the packet was open, I'd eat the entire packet, the whole lot in one go. In fact, they didn't even make it home from the supermarket. I'd be scoffing them in almost a frenzied-like state as I was driving home, and the packet would be finished before I pulled up in the driveway, which was only about a 5-minute drive, I might add. But thankfully, I've been able to change that behaviour, and now I can have a packet of Apricot Delight open in the pantry for weeks and easily just eat one when I feel like it. And yes, I'm one of those people who can also eat 3 bites of dessert and push the rest away easily without another thought, as I've had enough. So how did I get from where I was then to how I am today? Well, first of all, it's highly likely you're assuming that I have more control over my impulses or urges now, and that's what's stopping me from overindulging. You see, most people believe what you need to succeed is more willpower. And I got stuck in that trap too. I thought that was what I needed. I'd even tell myself, if only I had more willpower. And I went round and around in circles for years because I was thinking this way. But that's not actually true. Willpower isn't the answer. If willpower isn't what's holding me back, what is? What is keeping my behaviour in check? Well, actually nothing is holding me back or keeping me in check. It's that I have a different mental process going on that stops me gorging on Apricot Delight or scoffing any other food. In other words, I think differently now. And no, since one of my clients once asked, this did not require a lobotomy to get me here either. I actually think differently about food, and you can too. So let me explain this so you can understand what I mean. In a dieter's mind, when they see or even think about certain foods, their thought process will be something like this. No, I can't, or I shouldn't, or that's bad, or wrong, or naughty, or I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be good. And that is how I used to think. But now my thought process is, I can have it if I want it, but is that what I really want? And then I'm able to make a choice in the moment, a conscious choice in the moment about what I really want, rather than feel compelled and drawn to eating and feeling like this behavior is beyond my control, like it used to be. So there are many reasons why you can be drawn to, or rather compelled to eat, when you know you're not actually hungry. But the change I made that made the biggest impact in stopping this behavior is dropping all the rules I had about food. And I see this with my clients too. A lot of overeating or feeling like they're out of control around food is due to rules. Even if we're not currently following a diet, so many of us have rules in our head about what we should and shouldn't be eating. Rules that we aren't fully aware are there, but they guide our food choices and affect how we feel about and when we eat certain foods. We have rules about points and calories or macros or food that contains sugar, or rules about how we can't eat carbs or we can't eat carbs after 5, that's for sure. We have rules about what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, because we've turned food into a moral issue, which stokes a subconscious belief that the bad ones are really the best ones. And we can have rules about how we have to finish everything on our plate and how we can't throw food away. And often we're confused and don't even know which rules to follow because there are so many that often contradict themselves anyway. And we tell ourselves we're bad or we're wrong because we want to eat certain food. But then we end up breaking one of these rules and we feel like we've committed a mortal sin because we ate some chocolate or a biscuit. Next thing you know, we're arguing the case in our head, trying to justify what just happened. And eating, something we have to do every day in order to survive, suddenly feels very complicated and confusing and exhausting. When you have rules about what you should or shouldn't eat, you become disconnected from your likes and dislikes, and you become disconnected from your body and how to eat as a quote unquote normal person, and you start to believe somehow that you need to be told how to eat. We cling on to these rules, holding on to them for dear life, and we think we need to follow the plans and the programs and the guidelines because we've become so disconnected from how we should be eating. So does this sound familiar at all? Can you recognize any of this behavior in you? Are you aware of any food rules you have around what you should or shouldn't eat? Have you moralized food as good or bad? Which is crazy when you stop to think about it. After all, did you ever see lasagna run a red light or a chocolate bar rob a bank? But we have all these rules. You hear it when people talk about food. And we all end up rebelling against these rules, which is completely normal because none of us like to be told what to do. I don't know whether any of you have ever noticed this, but adults typically don't like to be told what to do. And as a grown woman, you don't want to be told that you can't eat the chocolate, or that you can't have dressing on your salad or cheese on your pasta, or that you can't have pasta because it's carbs, or that you need to eat those bloody awful carb-free slimy noodles in place of pasta, and you can't have cheese on that because cheese contains too much fat. I know I don't like being told what to do, and let's face it, most of us don't like to be told what to do. Most of my clients who are dieters very much fit that personality of people-pleasing good girls, and if you grew up in the same era as me, we had to be good girls when we were kids. We didn't have a choice back then. Certainly not back when I was growing up, because you got belted if you weren't good. So you try to be the good girl and stick to the rules, but really, you don't want to, and that inner rebel has had enough. She's had enough of being pushed down when she was a kid, and that fire ignites within you, and before you know it, you don't care, and you're going to eat what you bloody well want. Or is that just me? You end up rebelling against these rules and you end up overeating all the so-called bad foods. Because if you think about it, you never feel crazy around a bowl of salad or can't stop eating a bowl of steamed broccoli. It's not those foods you overeat. You're drawn towards the foods that you've been told by diet culture or society or yourself that you're not allowed, that you shouldn't be eating. So let's have a look step by step at what is happening here. You have rules about what you should and shouldn't eat, but in order to know which foods you shouldn't eat, you first need to know which foods they are. And this is where it all starts. So if I say to you, don't think about a pink elephant, whatever you do, don't think about a pink elephant, what pops into your head? An image of a pink elephant, right? So in order to not think about something, you first have to think about it. So you think about the food in order to know which food you shouldn't have. And most of these foods you have an association with. For example, chocolate. When you've eaten chocolate in the past, you really enjoyed it. And so you think about chocolate and your association with chocolate is, yum. Then you tell yourself, I shouldn't eat chocolate. So you're thinking, yum, but now you're thinking you can't have it. And all of a sudden, you start to feel deprived. Are you following? So you're thinking about how you can't eat this pleasurable food, and that inner rebel is like, fuck that. And next thing you know, you've inhaled a whole bar. So can you see that having rules is the problem? Without rules, food is just food. It's not good, bad, right or wrong. It's not a moral issue anymore. It's not something you should or shouldn't eat. It's simply food, and then you get to choose if and when you want to eat it. And when you let go of the rules, food just becomes food because it's no longer this thing that you're fixated on and obsessed about. Does that make sense? And I know that I make dropping food rules sound easy, like it's just something where you can flick a switch and stop. And I get that it's not at all like that for most of us, as this topic often comes up again and again with clients, and it certainly wasn't easy for me. In fact, it probably took me a good few years before I realised that all of the food rules I'd picked up over the course of my life were finally gone. As I'd think they were gone, but every now and again something would fall out of my mouth and I'd hear what I just said and I'd realise there was a sneaky food rule still hiding there in the dark corners, in the dark recesses, in the back of my mind. You have these food rules because you believe they're keeping you safe from yourself. Because without them, you'll go crazy and just eat and not know when to stop. And you have this belief that if you're left to your own devices, you can't be trusted. You're going to be like this mean green eating machine. And that's because you've been told you can't trust your body. Often this happens as young girls. You're conditioned to believe your body can't be trusted. As a child, when I would feel hungry, I was told time and time again, no, you're not. Go drink a glass of water and it will go away. And every now and again, that did work, but more often than not, it didn't. So you first start to doubt yourself, then eventually stop believing what your body is telling you. And as you continue through life, you get the message again and again that your body is wrong and you shouldn't listen to it and you don't need to pay attention to it. Then you go on diets, and by the time you're a grown-ass woman, you've disconnected from your body. You're disconnected from the neck down, which is ironic because it's usually the parts of your body from the neck down you don't like and beat yourself up about. So if you feel out of control around food and feel like you can't stop, there are rules in your mind about what you should and shouldn't eat. Sneaky rules that you may not even realise are there. Rules that you've learned about food because you're not born thinking food is right, wrong, good or bad. This is something that you are taught. This is learned behaviour. And diet culture has got a massive role to play in terms of your perceptions around food and how you actually interact with it. And then you become like fish swimming in water, not even realizing those rules are there. But if you're wanting to hold on to them as you think you need them to keep some kind of check and some kind of control around food, but I have to ask you, how's that working out for you? Diet culture has turned food into a moral issue. The morality around food is actually the biggest issue for every single one of you that has the feeling that once you start, you can't stop. Once you see how these rules are actually creating the situation of being out of control, you can't unsee it. Then you can decide to work on dropping them. Because when there's nothing to rebel against, you stop rebelling. Food becomes food. You can eat it consciously and savour every bite. And when you eat this way, instead of your head being full of thoughts about how you shouldn't and how bad this is, you can actually taste what you're eating and notice if you're enjoying it or not. And that is how you eat half a cookie. And if you'd like to know more about conscious eating, I have a free 5-day challenge you can sign up to on my website. Just go to Caroline Trickey, that's tricky with an EY.com. Okay, that's what I have for you today. I'll see you for next week's episode where I will explain why you feel like you can't get your shit together. Have a great week, and I'll speak with you then. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, take a few seconds to leave a review, and share this podcast with any of your friends or family you think may benefit from it. Your reviews and shares make all the difference in helping to get this information out into the world, and I would be ever so grateful.